Good morning, Bulldogs. It's Friday, March 20th. This is the second day. We have day one again. So our second class for our first and third honors classes since this emergency closing. So let's talk a little bit about some things today. To know what happened on this day, I'll just take a minute to talk about March 20th of 1815, since we're just finishing up our unit on the Age of Revolutions. We did have a video and some discussions about Napoleon. And I know before we left, we mentioned on this day when he went to Elba and was in exile. And one of my students, I believe is block 3, asked, like, well, didn't he go to exile twice? He was like, yes, he did. Because after his first exile here, he actually did return to France. And this is the day that happened. He had his army of about 140,000 plus a volunteer force of around 200,000 people. And this began what's known as his 100 days of rule, or what the French would call the Cent Jours. When this happened, he had command again in France for like now his second time until July of 18th. On July 18th, Louis the 18th returned with another Bourbon restoration. To try to get support of his people, he did some things like made big changes in the imperial constitution. But internationally, there was a response to this. Britain, Russia, and Prussia all joined an alliance against Napoleon, and battles continued. Ultimately, the British won at the Battle of Waterloo, and quite then after, the monarchy returns with the Bourbon Restoration, and then Napoleon is sent in exile for his final time to a British island, St. Helena, in the South Atlantic. Now, it is Women's History Month, so I do want to take a minute to talk about Harriet Beecher Stowe. And on this day in 1852, her book Uncle Tom's Cabin was published. And this book helped the abolitionist cause of the 1850s. I have a copy of the book. Of course, it's in our classroom, so I'm not going to be reading excerpts from it for you right now. If there's any way you can like read it online from a library or something, that might be something you want to do while you're home. It actually is a good novel. Besides just being like a historical novel, you might enjoy reading it. And it would be a good book to read before taking US 1, or, Now, there's the saying that Lincoln, when he met her, said, so this is the little lady who started the Great War, because so many people joined the abolitionist cause after reading this. That's by historians, not 100% confirmed. That wasn't in print that he said that to her until 1896. But either way, it shows that she had a big effect, whether it's true or not. So I don't have the book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, here with me, but I do have this book. Remember, I've written a lot about Grant. This is Grant and Twain. I read this a few years ago, and it's about the friendship between our former president, Ulysses S. Grant, and the famous author, Mark Twain. Now, Twain was also friends with Harriet Beecher Stowe and the larger Stowe family, who was basically a family of writers. So I'm just going to read a little bit about it because it says a little bit about this book here. This is on page 46. It says, Twain's relationship with his neighbor, Harriet Beecher Stowe, was at least part of the reason he kept thinking about slavery. Stowe was not only famous, she was famous for having written Uncle Tom's Cabin, the most successful American novel of its time. Uncle Tom was not simply a successful book. It had done more than any other book to solidify the nation's abhorrence of slavery. Uncle Tom's Cabin sold 300,000 copies in the first year after its publication, and gave Stowe such notoriety that it was said that Abraham Lincoln greeted with her, so this is the little lady that caused the Civil War, when she visited the White House. That's what I was just talking about. Well, the story is apocryphal. I have to practice my vocab there. So that, like I said, how it's not necessarily confirmed. It contains a seed of truth. While Beecher Stowe was viewed not only as a nation's preeminent expert on slavery, but as its most articulate critic. The Stowes were one of the reasons Twain moved to Hartford in the first place. That's in Connecticut. They, Harriet, her husband Calvin, Harriet's sister Isabella Hooker, and her husband, John Hooker, formed the core of America's premier literary society. And it goes on, and there's actually quite a few pages in that book that talks about his friendship with Harriet Beecher Stowe. But it shows that as a writer, what a big difference she had on the nation, socially, economically, because of the war, and obviously politically, military because of the war. So a good thing to highlight for Women's History Month. So for today, what will you be doing? There are 2 videos on the Haitian Revolution. I guess I could have made it 1 video if we were still in school. I would have had 2 Google Forms on it. But to make things simple, I'm just going to give you the 2 videos and 1 form. It's like 10 questions. You answer the Google form. That's it. I'm keeping it simple for today. Before we try to, recap and see what kind of assignments we should keep doing moving forward. We're not going to be having just a simple Google form every day. Keep an eye out. I think on Classroom, I'm going to put an optional Google form with some feedback. So while it's optional, if you want to have a say on what kind of assignments we're doing or what kind of things to provide for you guys, I'll be helping making my decisions based on the answers. Now, usually remember a Google form, if you don't, I combine a few of them as 1 grade. That's not the case. This Google form today will be 1 standalone grade. I don't have a makeup assignment for it if you don't do it, so please do complete it. And the grade will be what you get. It's not just a completion grade. So if you get an 83, you get an 83. You get 100, you get 100. So just, do the best you can. Let me know if there's any questions. And I hope everyone's doing as best they can. Miss everyone, and try to enjoy your weekend in some way or the other.